Avery Fairchild was 17, the day her world cracked open. Rain fell in lazy streaks against the stained glass windows of St. Matthew's Chapel. Each droplet blurred the colors until they bled together in shades of red, blue, and gold. The hues pooled into ghostly shapes that spread across the wooden floor, dancing with the flicker of candlelight. The smell of wet stone clung to the air, mixing with smoke from the altar candles and the heavy perfume of lilies wilting in tall vases near the coffin. The choir sang. Their voices floated through the chapel like threads of silk. Smooth, too smooth. They were hushed and steady, but carried a strange control, too flawless to belong to grieving human voices. Funerals already had a way of making hymns sound hollow, like echoes of ghosts singing to keep the living from stirring. But this was not just grief. This was colder. Avery sat stiff in the pew, her spine pressed hard against the wood. Her hands were clasped so tightly her nails dug into her palms. She focused on the sting because it was real, because it reminded her she was still here. Loretta, her grandmother and her anchor, was gone. The woman who had raised her since she was 5. The woman who told bedtime stories of courage when no one else was listening. The only one who never lied when others tried to soothe her with empty promises. It will be okay. That was what people always said. And yet it never was, except with Loretta. With Loretta, words meant something. Now those words were buried with her. And Avery was not crying. She could not cry. Something else gnawed at her chest, a wrongness in the air, a shadow pressing against her lungs. At first she thought it was just the choir. Their voices seemed flawless, polished, but they did not sound human. They sounded rehearsed, manufactured, fake. She looked up, and her breath caught. The choir was not the choir at all. Men and women, impossibly beautiful, ringed her grandmother's coffin. Their faces were carved like marble, smooth and unblemished. Their hair gleamed like spun glass, every strand perfect, every feature cruel in its precision. And as Avery stared, a deeper horror set in. Their faces seemed to shift, folding into one another as though they were the same person wearing different masks. One face would hold her gaze, and then it blurred into another, seamless, without transition. Different yet the same. Many in one. Her stomach twisted. Their eyes glowed faintly, catching the candlelight in ways no human eye ever could. They were not mourning. They were not even singing. Their lips moved, but what spilled out was not music. It was whisper. Sharp, slithering syllables that slid beneath the hymn like rot behind a painted wall. And no one else noticed. Not the pastor. Not the mourners dabbing their eyes with tissues. Not even Maya, sitting right beside her. Avery's best friend leaned close and whispered gently, "Are you okay?" Avery swallowed. Her throat ached. "Wait, you don't see them." "See who?" Maya glanced at her, then back at the front of the chapel, her brow lifting in quiet confusion. "It's just the choir, Avery." But Avery's stomach dropped. Because the beautiful people were no longer looking at the coffin. They were looking at her. One tilted his head, slow, deliberate, like a predator testing its prey. When his perfect lips parted, Avery saw teeth that were too sharp and far too many. There was a double row of white points gleaming behind his smile. Her pulse thundered in her ears. And then the air shifted. A ripple tore across the chapel like heat-bending asphalt in the sun. Candles flickered and shuddered inside their glass. The song faltered for half a beat. Then silence. From the silence, something stepped through. A figure. It was towering with a strange armored skin armored, and looked terrifying. It was not beautiful, and it was not gentle. It gave an aura that magnetized the air. Its skin shone like molten bronze that was sketched with glowing sigils that pulsed as though it was its own life force. It was alive. Its chest heaved like the weight of storms lived inside it. When its wings unfurled, they were not feathers instead. They were arcs of iron that was threaded with fire, with sparks raining as they scraped against the air. The congregation sat still and looked straight ahead in the very direction. But at nothing, because they could not see. Only Avery could. The beautiful ones recoiled. Their perfect lips split into snarls. Their flawless features cracked into something feral. The whispers sharpened into shrieks, and their glassy eyes narrowing into blades of emerald and gold. The figure's voice split the air. It sounded low and final, like the earth itself, groaning beneath a mountain's weight. Bridegroom's kin, you will not claim this one. And the war began. Benches shattered as unseen bodies collided. The candles toppled over, spilling wax across the altar. The beautiful ones lunged, and their movements were fast enough to slice the air itself. The iron-winged being met them head-on with its weapon flaring bright. It was no ordinary sword. It was a molten brand of fire and ice woven into glistening steel. Each swing carved sparks into the air that seared the hymnals as they slid from pews. The mourners looked into nothingness, and yet they clutched their ears, not at the battle, but at the thunder that shook the chapel from nowhere. To them, the space remained unchanged. Only Avery saw the truth. She pressed back into her seat and started to tremble with her pulse pounding. Maya gripped her hand tighter, and her knuckles turned white, not knowing why. Her grandmother's coffin rattled, and the whispers surged. And across the chaos, one of the beautiful ones fixed its gaze on Avery. And it smiled. Not at the coffin. Not at the iron-winged being. At her. A smile that told her it knew her name. Avery Fairchild's breath hitched. Her heart thundered in her chest, with each beat echoing like a drum. Because for the first time in her life, she understood. She was not just watching. She was seeing. And what she saw made her have a stark realization that she was part of this war. To be continued.